Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into this really powerful theory that gets at why so many of our shared resources, everything from the oceans to clean air, often end up totally overused and destroyed. It's a story that starts out looking pretty bleak, but as you'll see, it ends with a surprising amount of hope.
All right, let's just jump right in with the big question. It's a question that honestly sits at the heart of so many of our biggest problems, whether we're talking about climate change or just the traffic jam you sat in this morning. Are we just doomed? Is it in our nature to use up everything we share until it's gone?
To really get this, we have to start with a classic story. And I'll be honest, it's a pretty pessimistic take on things, but it's the one that made this whole idea famous. It's a simple metaphor, but wow, its implications are huge.
So the core idea is this. There's this fundamental clash between what's good for me right now and what's good for all of us in the long run. It's what happens when you have a shared resource and nobody really has a good reason to hold back. In fact, there's every reason to take as much as you can.
Now, this idea wasn't exactly new. It had been floating around in some form since way back in the 1830s. But it was an ecologist named Garrett Hardin who, in 1968, gave it that catchy name and just blasted it into the mainstream, right when people were starting to get really worried about the environment.
And here is the simple, kind of cold logic that Hardin laid out. Picture a pasture that's open to everyone. For any single herder, the thinking goes like this. If I add one more cow, I get 100% of the profit from that cow. But the cost, that tiny bit of extra grass it eats, that gets shared by everybody. So from a purely rational point of view, what's the smart move? It's always to add another animal.
And that's the tragedy right there. The key word is locked. Hardin's point wasn't that the herders are greedy or bad people. He argued that they're trapped in a system that forces their hand. Their individually smart decisions, when added up, lead straight to a collective disaster for everyone. Okay, so this isn't just some old-timey story about pastures. This exact same logic plays out all around us in some of the most critical issues we're dealing with today.
The most obvious places you see this are in the environment. I mean, the world's oceans, the big rainforests, the air we breathe, these are the ultimate common resources. And without any rules, the incentive for every person or company or country is to take as much as you can as fast as you can before the next guy does.
And if you want to see just how devastating this can be, just look at the oceans. The population of Pacific bluefin tuna. It's been fished down to something like 3% of its original size. I mean, just let that sink in. It is a perfect and heartbreaking example of this tragedy playing out in the real world.
But it goes way beyond the environment. Think about your morning commute. That's a tragedy of the commons, right? Each person rationally decides, I'm going to drive, and the result is a massive traffic jam for everybody. Or something like antibiotic resistance. Every time we overuse them, it might help one person in the short term, but it wears down this incredible shared resource, medicine that actually works.
Okay, so just when you're starting to feel like this is all kind of hopeless and inevitable, the story takes a huge turn. There's a plot twist, and it all hinges on one critical question.
You see, decades after Hardin's essay became famous, researchers started to push back. And one in particular, a political economist named Elinor Ostrom, asked a really simple but profound question. Wait a minute, is that lawless, anything-goes field that Hardin described? Is that really what a commons is?
And this is the key. It turns out there's a huge difference here. A real historical commons wasn't a free-for-all. It was a resource that was managed by a community with its own set of rules and traditions. What Hardin was actually describing was what we'd call an open access resource, basically a free-for-all with no rules, no community, no management at all.
And this one insight, it just changes everything. The tragedy isn't caused by sharing. The tragedy is caused by a total lack of rules and cooperation. So it's not a tragedy of the commons, it's a tragedy of an unmanaged, unregulated mess. Which brings us to the hero of our story, Elinor Ostrom. She spent her entire career showing that communities aren't helpless and that this tragedy is absolutely not inevitable.
Ostrom's work was this incredible counter-story to Hardin's pessimism. She literally went all over the world studying how real people manage their shared resources, from irrigation systems in Spain to forests in Nepal. And you know what she found? She found success. She found countless examples of communities that had figured it out. And for this amazing work, she became the first woman ever to win the Nobel Prize in economics.
So how'd they do it? Well, Ostrom realized there wasn't one single magic answer.
Instead, she found a set of design principles that all these successful communities seem to share. It starts with basics, like you need to have clear boundaries, who's in the group and who's out. And the rules have to actually make sense for the local situation. And this is crucial. The people actually using the resource have to have a say in making the rules.
And it doesn't stop there. You need effective monitoring. You need fair punishments for people who break the rules, punishments that start small and get bigger. You need cheap and easy ways to solve arguments. Basically, what she discovered wasn't some top-down solution, but a toolkit for communities to govern themselves from the bottom up. And it proved that people can, and very often do, cooperate to avoid the tragedy.
So, what does this whole debate, this back and forth between Hardin's tragedy and Ostrom's hope, what does it all mean for the huge challenges we're facing right now, from our oceans to our atmosphere?
Well, we now know that there isn't one simple fix. There's a whole menu of options. You've got top-down government rules, which can work for big problems, but can also be clunky and inefficient. You can privatize the resource, which gives an owner a reason to protect it, but that can lead to all sorts of inequality. And then you have community management, which, as Ostrom showed, can be super effective, but might be hard to apply to, say, a global problem like climate change.
The modern way of thinking about this moves beyond having to pick just one. The big takeaway is that the best solutions often mix and match these approaches. It's what's called a polycentric system, where you have local groups, regional authorities, and national governments all working together, each playing their part to manage a resource.
And in the end, that's what it all comes down to. From the health of our planet to the future of the internet, the story of the commons is really our story. It's a challenge for us to stop thinking we're trapped in some inevitable tragedy and to start thinking creatively about how we build the systems that shape our future together. It turns out, the choice between tragedy and cooperation, well, that choice is up to us.